Hi, everyone. You're watching Conversationality, a bi-weekly show brought to you by Optionality, your community exploring the now of work. Happy Thursday. Jory
Hello.
Desjardins here, Elisa Camahort Page here of
Hola.
Optionality. And I'm so happy to have not only once this week, but twice this week joining us, Olivia Shengreen. She is an Optionality original gangsta. That is, we'll add that title to your Optionality member status as well. And had moderated a panel for us this week around upskilling and education and changing it up mid-career, which is something I thought would be a great conversational topic today for those of us who are there.
Yeah, and then we thought, Jory and I had planned for today to talk about what we learned from this webinar. Since neither of us was speaking on it, I was just really there as an audience member. And then I thought, but also let's bring Olivia on because as the moderator, you prepped and planned for it. You thought about it before, during, and after. And so we wanted, for those of you who couldn't join us, we thought we would talk a bit about what did we find most interesting? What did we learn? What actions we might take? But to Jory's point, Olivia, you are like a shining example right now of someone who has really decided to go through a real career flip, which required, becoming qualified to do that. So actually, I would love if you could just tell your story a bit before we dig into the webinar and tell us what you were doing, what you're doing now, and how you upskilled yourself to do this new career.
Yeah, I mean, I've led a many-lived career, including I worked in engineering, supply chain, mergers and acquisitions, and then most recently on the corporate world in HR, human resources, working in people analytics, employee engagement, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Most recently, my pivot in the last year and a half has been to being an independent educational consultant, a college consultant focused on helping high schoolers make that transitional journey to college, making sure they understand kind of themselves a little bit better, choosing a major perhaps, looking at college lists, and then helping them through the actual application phase. We're in the thick of it right now. Congratulations to all our seniors out there that are working their way through essays. And it was so interesting during the webinar earlier this week, right, where people were talking about what skills do you need? Like, how are you going to get there? How are you going to be funded? All those sorts of things. And I reflected a little bit myself, like, how did I make this journey? Well, I think there's kind of three key elements. One is I did feel like I needed something official, right? So I went to UC Berkeley Extension, got my certificate, which was a 1.5-year program around college consulting, because I'm in this space. I'm not saying everybody needs to have like an actual piece of paper, but I'm in this space where we're talking about college, right? And diplomas and all that sort of thing. So I felt like I'd be more comfortable myself having, something with that educational background. The second piece was I started volunteering. I wanted to test early on, like, am I going to really enjoy working with high schoolers? I had been volunteering with college students, and I have my own high schooler, which is different than working with high schoolers. And so I did a lot of volunteering to make sure, okay, I love working with high schoolers. So that was a great kind of validation point. And the third piece is, as always, it's all about your network. And so talking to people that I knew, who introduced me to other people, this is how I ended up at my current firm today on my way consulting. Nicole Hoseman was a friend of somebody that I knew in my past corporate life. And so we were introduced, and the rest is kismet. Yeah.
So I had no idea there was even such a program that you could take for college consulting, and that it would be a 1.5 years. I mean, I had no idea. What was that? Just what was that program like? Like how many hours a week, for example, did you spend
Yeah, I mean, it was, I only took one course at a time, and it is designed for folks that are working full or part-time, so that it's evening classes, et cetera. Some of them were fully asynchronous, which, I went to college in the days of everything was synchronous and in person. So it took me some time getting used to that. And then there were some that were live as well. And it was, I think it was really helpful to, was very deliberate about making connections with fellow students offline. So we had a text chain. I started like a book club just to try and keep everybody kind of looped together. And so that's been really helpful because we're all learning about this at about the same rate, because we all went through the program together. Yeah.
Wow.
Cool.
Well, and it's interesting. I didn't realize you went through a certification program.
Yeah.
The event that we asked you to moderate was in part about certifications and ways to explore avenues when you're thinking about getting upskill and new education for emerging career paths. And I found it so well, I loved the fact that we had so much engagement. That was the first thing. But
Yeah.
I also
Mhm.
realized there is so much pent-up demand, especially among people in mid-career who are trying to figure this out. And it's only been exacerbated by AI and this push to get skills, to get up to speed. And so I think there is this anxiety. We call it FOBO, fear of being obsolete, that has been driving a lot of our decision making. I'm curious to know, as the moderator, did you find the panel? Was there anything there that you thought, I didn't think about it that way until this panel? What were some of the surprises there?
Well, so first of all, I think the hook was so strong, the fear of being obsolete. And so I was so delighted when we talked about it, like both Gina and Vicky really put an optimistic spin on it. And I just really appreciated that because it's not good to be, you're supposed to be running to something instead of away from something. And so I thought it was really nice that they really talked about that. And in particular, like what really struck me, Vicky talking about Profellow, that the platform that will essentially help you dream dreams about what your future can be, is you log in and you look at, oh my gosh, there is funding for all of these different and unique programs. So of course you really want to go in with a goal, but it's kind of also fun to sort of browse and try things on and like see what might fit for you when you're in the middle of mid-career. And then similarly with Gina with Atheon and talking about sort of skill building. We talked about this a little bit in the webinar itself, but Gina and I talked about it ahead of time as well when we were prepping. And it was like, okay, it's great to have the skills, but how do you get people to actually believe you have the skills, right? And I've had this conversation with students and professionals, both in past lives and current lives, like, stop taking classes. I'm like, you're taking too many classes and you're not applying enough of it. So you got to find some kind of project. You can make your own project and even fund it through Profellow grants. Who knows? There are ways to apply these sorts of things. And I talk about one of my colleagues who she majored in data science. She ended up volunteering for Statisticians Without Borders. And they like deployed her and teams of people into nonprofits who have lots of data, but may not actually have the expertise to mine the data and find the actual insights they need to be more effective. And I was like, this is the kind of resume builder that you can add on where people are like, oh, I see, you got your certificate. I'm not saying this is my friend, but like, ideally it's like, oh, you get your certificate and then you have like a proof point next to it so that people have the confidence that you can actually apply whatever skill you may have learned.
Right. There was someone on the call that really struck me, and I thought you might have an opinion on this, because here you are working with young people who are seeking higher ed. And this was a person who had had a career, I believe, as an engineer for a long time in computer science, who decided he wanted to teach. And basically asked, hey, higher education is under siege right now, and PhDs are not getting funded due to a number of things happening in the world. What do you think about the future of higher education, at least as it relates to, higher ed? So PhDs, these
Yeah,
funded
because he had gotten a master's, right? He had gotten a
yes,
master's and he was looking into PhD programs.
yes. And I wondered, are current conditions affecting how you are advising young people when they're looking into college educations?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bunch of elements that we're looking at right now, which is, right, there's the cut in funding, NIH funding, et cetera, scientific grants. There's also the decrease in international students, which are a key funder for our universities as well. And so lots of schools are looking at, okay, how do we accomplish our goals with a decreased budget? And so the conversations I have mainly right now is making sure that the college list is filled with schools that we know are well resourced, right? That can still provide like career outplacement, that can still provide enough mentors and professors, et cetera, that can provide like a really robust experience inside of college. I know there's been a lot of predictions as the demographic cliff is happening, where the number of college eligible students is just shrinking in the United States, that there's going to be some schools that are going to close or they're going to merge. And so you want to kind of be aware and alert to kind of a lot of these different elements, so that you're not caught by surprise, because you also don't want to go into a program where the major is cut. The university is doing fine, but the major is cut.
I heard about that actually recently. Yeah. In the state, I guess they got rid of one of their programs, and there were people who were seniors. They had been in the program for 3 years and not sure, well, now what? How do I actually?
Oh, did you say Sonoma State?
Yes.
That's where my nephew goes. And it wasn't just one program, it was a bunch and all over the place, even ones you couldn't imagine, like econ, the econ major going away. Yes, arts, lots of the arts, lots of history, and lots of majors were going away. And they were, going to have to make some accommodations for people who were, like you said, seniors. But I mean, and they also got rid of some sports, and so universities were already struggling, many of them. So this is certainly not helping.
It makes me wonder, Olivia, if down the line you're going to have to add to the toolkit, right? You'll have to add professional certifications and other things that will have to supplement the experience, or maybe even replace it down the line. Education could very well look very different in 5-10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exactly what we talked about on Tuesday. Lifelong learning is going to need to be really important. The other thing that we're seeing already is that sort of the little gap for new college grads having a harder time getting those entry-level jobs, because AI is taking a lot of those sort of the grunt work away. And so the advice really is, within colleges need to figure out how to provide that experiential learning, where students have applied learning, internships, co-ops, projects, research, all those sorts of things, so they can also kind of skip jump at that entry level and get not maybe to mid-level, but at least a little bit beyond that first year or two, because we're seeing that sort of constriction in the job market.
Although, okay, so I think all of us are of an age where we recall the dot-com bust, and how many companies, not just here in Silicon Valley, but everywhere, thought the answer to their economic woes was to offshore, particularly customer support, tech support, but many other functions. And then over time, they realized that that was not actually bringing customer happiness. And so a lot of companies ended up pulling back. And I wonder if we're going to see the same. I think a lot of people are thinking AI is going to solve a lot of problems that it's actually not competent to solve. And I'll give you a really, really specific and small example, but I think it's kind of emblematic. So we hired Ryan to come help us with a bunch of stuff, and including something I didn't really think I needed that much help with, which is we get all these great video assets from these conversationalities and the webinars and all of that. And I use an AI tool called Opus Pro. Really love it, right? And it takes a video and it breaks it down and it gives you 20 to 30 clips. The clips are anywhere from 45 seconds to 2 or 3 minutes, even, that you can add your branding palette. You can add closed captions. It's awesome. And we started a YouTube channel. Hello, we're on YouTube right now. Please subscribe. And, you know, we're just automatically funneling videos to YouTube. And then I was occasionally posting these clips. And, you know, I wasn't giving it a lot of attention. And Ryan, when he came on board, because he's a YouTube user for years, right? He's like, these clips are still too long. And the other thing is the money quote is actually usually the way humans talk. The way humans talk is we lead up to our money quote, and then we have a decrescendo from our money quote. And he's like, but you only have like 5 or 6 seconds to get someone's attention. So you need to edit these. So the money quote is first, and then provide context for the money quote. So he went in and took existing AI generated clips, which I thought were just awesome. And he cut them down even further, like 30, 35 seconds, moved the money quote to the top, and he successfully, within no time at all, we fairly regularly get clips in YouTube shorts that get 1,000, 2,000 views. Whereas before we weren't getting any views. And this is not from us promoting it. This is from feeding the algorithm. The algorithm is what's deciding when people go to scroll YouTube shorts. So that's a human saying, okay, AI, like, nice start, but now I got to fix you. Mm-hmm. And so I really wonder if a lot of the things that companies are just assuming AI can do for them from the jump and do it accurately and well, they're going to have to pull back from and be like, oh, shoot, we actually need humans to like make this rough cut, the final cut, of what we want it to do. Whether it comes to vibe coding or any other function, junior engineering, you got all these companies saying, I don't need junior engineers anymore. And leaving aside every other issue about mentoring and how you get to senior engineers, just the fact that they assume AI can be as good or better than a human doing that introductory engineering. I don't think we know enough to say, yeah, they can do it. Because we haven't analyzed like but what are the mistakes there? What mistakes are getting baked in? Mm-hmm. What bugs are getting baked in? I mean, it's true even of humans. I'll say this, my husband's a software engineer, and different engineers have a different, if you looked at their history, he will say, in my whole career of the last 20 years, I have maybe introduced 3 bugs into software that actually shipped. And there's a whole lot of other engineers that probably have bugs, and then they fix the bugs. And so even humans have a varying rate of, they're not perfect, right? And have varying skill levels, but AI is not perfect either.
There's a great piece that Brian Solis wrote on LinkedIn. I shared it. I thought it was really inspiring. And he calls out, I guess there was an analysis of what GPTs are being used for. And there's a comparison between 2024 and 2025. The notable difference is that increasingly this year, people are using GPTs for critical thinking, mental health, and other things that really are not, these are not one and done type operations. They require human interpretations. And it was kind of a warning call. Like, okay, that's great if you used it for brainstorming and then took off and let it enhance your thinking. But we're really at risk if we're going to literally give AI license over our own critical thinking and ability to heal thyself. And the thinking there is, well, maybe that is the primary use case of universities and of a college education now, is helping us learn to think for ourselves. And because some of these skills are going to be taken by AI and AI GPTs, wouldn't it make sense then for the higher education to think about these higher cognitive processing skills and focus on those moving forward? I'm plugging liberal arts right there.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what you can learn, and learning how to establish a critical relationship with the technology.
That's really interesting. I was at a conference this week and AI came up a lot, but it wasn't overly dominant like it was at the previous conference I went to. But there was this discussion of of using AI for therapy, or is it better to have an AI therapist than no therapist at all in a country where mental health resources are scarce? And people I know who have needed to get mental health resources, adults and for their kids, there are long wait times. There's nobody available. If you need to get it covered by your health insurance, or you're paying out of pocket and it's super expensive, there's a lot of barriers to good mental health coverage. So is an AI therapist better than no therapist at all? And, I think we couldn't even really agree in the room about that. If they're not programmed to say, oh, you've really crossed, like I'm an AI and I really want to help you, but I think you're at the point where you need to make a call. Like, they have to be programmed to know when they are not sufficient. And I don't know if AI really, my experience with AI is they really want to please you, and they will really not tell you. Like, I've had an experience where I tried to get AI to do something and it kept telling me it was going to do it and it would be ready by tomorrow. And then the next day I would check and it'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm still working on it. And then I'm finally like, you can't do this at all, can you? Or what was the other one? Oh, Bordy. Everyone's talking about that Bordy AI networking thing where it will connect you to people. And I had a 30-minute conversation with the Bordy AI. And I liked some of the ways it reframed things back to me and articulated. So I asked it for a transcript. And 3 different times it said it would send me one of our conversation. 3 different times it said it would. And after the 3rd time and a day goes by and it still didn't, I said, are you actually able to send me a transcript? And then it was like, no, I'm sorry. I misstated my capabilities. I can't send you a transcript.
Right.
So AI can gaslight you sometimes. I've had that happen on more than one occasion, where it gaslights you.
Human, isn't it?
What?
That's very human, isn't it?
Yeah, well, there's that. Like, it's emulating humans too well. But I think, like,
that is part of the education that is needed for the future of work and the future of life, right?
Yeah.
And getting by is understanding where AI begins and ends, and where human needs is uniquely qualified to support.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I will say I was most surprised by Vicky talking about, like, I had no idea there were so many different opportunities in so many different ways, so many different funded ways to do kind of non-traditional learning. And I just talked to a friend I saw at this event this week, and he's doing a fellowship at Stanford, and he's going to be doing research, and has an area, and it's not a graduate degree, because of course that's what you do with a PhD. You're researching, but it's like a more limited time, and I just didn't know. I think that's such a great service to be able to go through, and like you said, either you have a goal and it helps you find the thing you really want, or I think just to be inspired and see there are still so many organizations and institutions who are interested in furthering human understanding and knowledge. And it's easy to forget that if all you did was read the press, especially tech press, you would forget that there are still organizations and institutions who want to further human knowledge and human understanding and human endeavor. And I found that part really inspiring.
Yeah, as I was doing kind of my homework for this webinar, I was swimming through podcasts, interviews of Vicky and Gina, and one of the ones that Vicky she was talking about the fact that she said, when I was an undergrad, like, I just understood the word scholarships, and I didn't even have the vocabulary to know what funding words to use when looking at graduate school. She's like, suddenly it's fellowships and grants and tuition waivers and things like that. And she's like, this is why she created ProFellow, was to just try and like help empower people, not only with like the direct connections to the universities and the actual programs themselves, but like, what are the words that I need to use in order to find these opportunities?
Yeah. Let me ask one last question, because our member Helen Johnson had a question that I'm not sure we really answered for her, and it may be because we don't know. But Gina made a comment about like you should spend about 70% of your time, making sure you're really up to date on all your current skills and really at the front of that you really know what you're doing on what you know how to do, right? And then 30% you should think about like, where could I upskill? What's something new I need to learn? And I think that's what her organization, Atheon, is really geared towards helping you do. And Helen said, but how do you even know what the 30% is? And I think Jory, I don't know, remember if you said this during the webinar, but the how do you know what you don't know? Like, isn't it just an unknown unknown? And I don't know if we ever really got to, like that question of, do you just browse Coursera, browse Atheon, browse LinkedIn Learning and say, do you follow? Because one of the things I think is a benefit of upskilling is it broadens your horizons about where you can go work. If you're really an expert in one area, then you got to find jobs in that one area. If you're an expert on a function or a knowledge set, can you come bring that to another area? So like, how do you, and let me just add a third element, which is I'm old, I'm tired. Like everything I put in my brain pushes something else out. And sometimes I look at something like Snapchat. I remember this from like 10 years ago. I'm like, I'm just going to choose to say that I don't need to understand Snapchat. I'm a social media expert. I don't need to understand Snapchat. I don't get it. I don't want to get it.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I mean, so how do you decide? And then what do you do right now? If you're like, oh shoot, I need to like get up to speed on something new. How do you decide that right now?
I'll be honest. I think Gina didn't want to overshell because Atheon does help you figure that out. I mean, that is part of, she has developed skill taxonomies. And what she did was take taxonomies. There are many that exist and that human resources professionals leverage. So for IT, these are the skills based on any number of roles. She combined all them and then separated out the ones that are going to be particularly relevant for specific roles in the future. So she could have answered that, but I think, you could go to Atheon and find out. But I think more relevantly, she did make the point that it's going to be about transferable skills. So rather than obsess about, oh my God, I need to learn prompt engineering today, realize that prompt engineering is shifting constantly. Like the prompts that I can put in today are, I almost had to think like a programmer when I first learned prompt engineering, and it's gotten so much better over time. So that's something that's going to be shifting over time. Maybe it's better to think about where the puck could be going, which is, well, we won't really need to understand prompts so much as how AI generates information so that you can ask. The prompts are going to be very different moving forward. So I think it's about leveraging what we know or what we think could be happening. And that was the other thing that I think came up during that conversation. We won't be 100% right, but better to think and to make some qualified guesses based on where people are, what we're seeing happen, and then go for it versus I'm going to learn how to code in this language that may not exist in 5 years.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What do you think, Olivia?
Well, I mean, I think Gina was really right in terms of the fact that, go to your network first. Because if it's already on Coursera, you're already quote unquote too late, right? It's like there's already been a build of like stuff that's already been. So I'm not saying too late, but if you really want to be on the cutting edge of like, what are the new ideas, right or wrong, like it could, maybe they will go poof tomorrow. It is like to have those conversations with human beings and find out what's going on and how are people leveraging new technologies, or what's going on, especially in the role that in the industry that you're in, is to better understand that sort of stuff.
Well, that did come up, Olivia, just to remind folks who may not, or to tell folks who may not have been there. I think that was something that that Gina brought up, is also it's community. It's being connected with people who are grappling with the same questions you are in order to know where that puck is going.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is that I think, well, maybe Jory and I have thought for 20 years that community is kind of the answer, but like, look at optionality. We're trying constantly to bring people and thinkers to our community, like the webinar we had this week, but the ones we have coming up. So we have one coming up in October. Our next webinar, October 15th, is all about understanding your money story, so you can make better financial decisions and kind of know where you're coming from. We have our next in real life event is October 1st, and October is just the month of money. So we're also talking about money on October 1st in San Francisco. But, we're not the only ones out there trying to bring, this month was all about learning and where to find learning, and where there are many, many communities, and you don't have to belong to them all. You have to find, what are you interested in? Start with the community there, see what those people are talking about, and maybe follow. I used to talk about with blogging, follow the breadcrumbs. Look at, if you love a blogger, look at their blog roll. Who do they follow? Like, go follow some of those people. Build your blog roll, if anyone remembers that term. Build it by following the breadcrumbs. And I feel like learning, we can follow the breadcrumbs as well. And part of that is about being in community. And I don't necessarily think, I see sometimes on LinkedIn, you'll see those automated, so-and-so finished this certificate on LinkedIn Learning. And that's not actually what I mean, because what I want to see is people talking about, having conversations where you understand why they decided to learn that and how they felt about the certification they got. And was it worthwhile? And getting some, why have all these relationships? We have so many more relationships than you used to be able to manage when there wasn't the internet, right? Why have them all if you can't learn a little more, dig a little deeper?
Yeah.
With all those people. Otherwise, if they're all just superficial, like, what's the point? So find your community of people that you can dig a little deeper with, and that can like point you in directions. But anyway, we are at our give or take a little 30-minute mark. So we're going to say goodbye. If you didn't otherwise hear me shilling our next events, please go to optionality.life and sign up. And we do have a couple of cool events coming up, one in real life, one online. We would love to have you join us and just join us in the community and talk about all of these issues. And for now, I think we are signing off. Thank you, Olivia, for joining us for this conversationality. It's always fun to have. It's always fun to talk to Jory. It's also always fun to have someone else get in the mix, especially that you're like this living embodiment.
And an OG, no less.
An OG, but also a living embodiment of the theme, which is lifelong learning and how you kind of, give yourself credibility for making the switches you want to make. So have a great weekend, everybody.
Great to see you. Bye.